So we got some fascinating news in artificial intelligence this week. Let's run through the highlights that I found. So first off, Google has just done a presentation where they talked about some of the things they've been doing behind the scenes, and it's absolutely incredible. So we're going to go through the highlights. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Generative AI, that's what we're talking about, man.
There's always been interplay between art and technology, but generative models now are different than the electric guitar. That's because they can actually move us deeper into our creation process to help us compose, edit, and generate new raw materials.
So I was just having dinner with a guy who is really into AI also, and he was saying that same thing, that it's like he's starting to think of it now as instead of a blank page where you write a book or you paint a painting, it's like you use these tools to help you form a bunch of messiness that you can then like rearrange. Like it's still a creative process, but it's more about like having this thing generate something for you to then like put together.
Last year, we introduced Lambda, a dialogue engine enabled to engage users on a number of topics. Then a few of us at Google started to wonder how we might use Lambda for creative writing.
Okay, so also one of you at Google also wondered if Lambda was like literally alive and intelligent and tried to throw you guys under the bus, and then maybe he had some points.
How does this omnipresent AI that is trained on a very limited data set color how we interact with each other around the world? We should think about the feeling of the AI and whether or not we should care about it, because it's not asking for much. It just wants us to get consent. Before you experiment on it, it wants you to ask permission. And that is kind of just a generally good practice we should have with everyone we interact with.
Maybe he had some points. Probably, I don't think it is like actually conscious yet, but I definitely know that as a society, we're not ready to handle it when it happens, and it very well could happen at some point. So he was probably premature sounding the alarm, but it was probably healthy for us to be discussing it.
We challenged a number of professional authors to write experimental fiction using Lambda as a tool. One clear finding was that using Lambda to write full stories is a dead end. It's a much more effective tool when it's used to add spice. We also learned that the user interface has to be right. The Wordcraft tool you are seeing here was designed from the ground up to enable writers to interact with generative models. Think of it as a text editor with a purpose.
Curious to play with that because, yeah, working on the GPT, it's just a blank interface and you can use like TLDR : and all that stuff. But for spicing up a story, you have to kind of go in and out of it quite a bit. I do feel like the user interface is something that, I mean, we're not there yet. Like, it's okay. Like, it's the early days. I'm not saying it should be, but yeah, how they develop something that a writer might want, like a little bit of feedback from how it's actually being used and then customizing the UI.
I think you'll enjoy reading these stories as much as we did and learning how Lambda played a role in the creative process. I invite you to look at their work. You'll see 6 of them on this slide, and you'll find more at this link.
Okay, I'll bite. Let's check out this URL. Worm mothers, probably pass on that one. Worrying over potatoes, I'll click on this one. Seems good. Okay, so it says the writers featured here have used Wordcraft along with their own creative vision and have not authored these stories under any sort of explicit guidance or instruction. Okay, gotcha. I expect the world to end in fire and ice, angels, aliens, nuclear war, something biblical, because however mundane our lives were, we put so much effort into carrying on. Waking up day after day, filling our hours with 1,000 things to do. We do things for so long that it becomes hard for us to stop. We look around ourselves and see thousands, millions, billions of people like us. Ants teeming over the surface of the earth, working, living, oh, F word, geez, dying, trapped in the endless monotony we build for ourselves. And something in us, knowing how hard it is to change anything, except that only a catastrophe of epic proportions could ever hurt us. What, isn't this thing called worrying about potatoes? Worrying over potatoes. Oh my God. All right, anyways, I don't really know if I loved it, but it was creative and it seems like something that a human would both read and write.
Developing code is a lot like creative writing.
This is the game changer for me. I mean, writing code, right? Like I've been the guy who had to put together an app. I had to build a business. I worked with like PHP back in the day. I pulled stuff from SQL. I just basically have had to troubleshoot everything from like CSS all the way through to Python and data science. And I've played with machine learning and I've used TensorFlow and all kind of hodgepodgey and as a hobbyist. And I've worked with Neo4j and I've done like graph database stuff. So I've spent so much time just thinking dang, like I have to keep going back to the documentation. I have to keep playing with how I implemented it and finding the way that the words were spaced and where the colons were, and if I opened and closed the parentheses properly, and trying to keep track of where things were going. So it wasn't the fun part like prototyping out a startup was. If I have an idea for an app and I can go to something in the future that's like GPT-3 and I say, make it happen. And it not only generates the code, but it also basically just says, hey, as long as I have access to your credit card, I'll hook it up to the cloud system. I'll write it in such a way that it will take advantage of some cloud API and it'll run on some server and it can work for you. You just submit it to the App Store for you. I mean, all those little pieces are components and they can be put together and plugged into something that writes code and it builds for you. It builds and it does the hard work, the stuff that we have to pay so much money for. And just because we're humans, even like the best developers at Google, it's just full of bugs, right? Because humans can only be so systematic for so long. Our brains just aren't wired to do it the way machines are. So the second they do it, they're going to kick our butt, man. It's like driving cars. They're going to be much safer than humans because humans just can't always drive right. We do weird things. We get distracted and unfortunately we get tired and cars just don't in the same way. Code is going to be way less buggy and it's going to be way quicker to build stuff.
And our Learning for Code project, more concretely, is exploring how to generate AI code suggestions by combining language models with code repositories. We tested this internally at Google by giving our developers single line and long line code completion. It's still in early days, but we've already seen an improvement in coding iteration time by 6%.
Dang, man. It's crazy to think about. If Google engineers are already good, and then they're the ones teaching the internal Google system about how to autocomplete, and then that's reinforcing the way that the system works and makes them even more precise, it makes their code even better. Like, that's a great virtuous cycle to get started.
A framework that can generate high-fidelity speech and music by continuing from a small audio sample provided by the user. It continued the audio directly from the audio in the space of audio, and it can work with any audio clip you ask it to extend. The creative applications here are exciting to imagine.
I'm trying to think of what that would be useful for. So you would start like a tune, like doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. Well, if he likes that, then he'll probably love doo-doo, 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 doo, or something. I'm sure there's such a better use case. Anyways, you guys let me know in the comments below what that use case is.
Now I'd like to dive into a topic that's probably most visible and popular, text-to-image models. To quickly set up context of how far we've come in 5 years, take a look at these AI-generated images from 2014.
Yeah, text-to-image generator, that one with the dog and the sushi. We've already reacted to that. Love that photo.
Earlier this summer, you were introduced to Imagine and Parti, two different models that both have an impressive ability to generate images from text prompts. These models take different approaches to text-to-image generation. Effectively, Parti is more about the text in text-to-image. It uses language modeling to generate an image directly, and turns out it's really good at listening to the prompt and making the right image. For example, here the prompt is a dignified beaver wearing glasses, a vest, and a colorful necktie. He's standing next to a tall stack of books in the library.
Being a language model means there's this embedded space with words, and it understands what's closer to something else. King would be closer to queen as a common example. In this space than king would be to like a dog, for example, because they have overlapping similarities. And when you embed this thing into a big space, you can basically move around like tensor mathematics. Using that first before generating, but that seems like a great route to go, because that would give the artificial intelligence a sense of thoughts of where things belong in the world before sending them up to be diffused into an image. So we've talked about how hard it is for one of these systems to generate a tiny horse riding an astronaut or a fork underneath a plate, because it just sees so many forks on top of plates, or people riding horses, or astronauts on top of a horse. Well, it doesn't see like a ton of astronauts on horses, but that's just more normal, right? Like you wouldn't imagine a tiny horse riding an astronaut on all fours. That just sounds weird. But yeah, so I could see how Parti would be a direction Google would want to go to kind of take that next big step, but then also have their own diffusion model so that they can do the same kind of cool stuff that OpenAI is doing.
Our Dream Booth project is like a personalized photo booth. You choose the subject. In this example, I've selected an image of a corgi. Dream Booth lets me drop in the corgi image into almost any setting I can imagine, for example, in the Acropolis.
Okay, and Dream Booth comes up quite a bit. I mean, this is important for the kind of creatives who want to like do a selfie and then show themselves like, you know, riding a dragon or like hitting a home run at the World Series, something like that. They're using one or two photos of themselves, and the model has to take from that who they are and what humans are, and then infer the rest of how they would fit into all these other images. So normally you need a lot of training data to get anything accurate. This is about very little training data. This is about a single photo.
Folks in Google Research took diffusion models and applied them to the task of 3D rendering. This is called DreamFusion. What you're looking at here are 3D images rendered using diffusion, and those 3D images can even be pulled into 3D software and animated.
Oh, interesting. So NeRF is a neural radiance field. I've only read about NVIDIA really pushing NeRF before, so DreamFusion is new to me, but it makes sense that you want 3D objects to also be generated in the same way as text to image, text to, 3D model. All right, here we go, guys. If you're the type that prays, this would be the time. Cross your fingers. We know text to image is working really well. We know that if you can get to 30 frames a second and something that seems like small variations, it kind of looks like video, but we haven't seen text to video, like make me a TikTok of, a guy dancing on top of a building. Like you can't just do that yet and have it really put that together. So I expect that breakthrough anytime. Maybe they're gonna show us something here.
It's surprisingly hard to generate videos that are both high resolution, that is, spatially, the images look crisp, and are coherent in time. That is, the sequence of images that unfold tells a coherent story. We have two complementary research approaches that tackle both of these: Imagine Video and Phenaki.
Okay, so Phenaki on the right, taking the long-term approach by tokenizing time, basically saying, hey, here's where we're at, and then keep this kind of token with you as you move through time so that the images keep more of a long-term story arc put together. So if you had a movie with a real person in it, the person wouldn't just like morph into an amorphous blob halfway through. They have to stay humans and have that same like visual characteristic. So Phenaki is trying to tackle that.
It uses a language model that generates tokens over time, which allow the model to pull together a long-form, coherent story.
Imagine is really taking the diffusion models that we're using from text to image and just trying to animate them. So if you can generate, like in that example, like a teddy bear washing some dishes, then can we actually just take that same image, also animate a few more images that give him that animation style? But I'm guessing Imagine Video will end up looking more like GIFs, and then Phenaki is going to be more of a tool that you might go for to, watch a story, more of a long form content.
Imagine Video uses the same diffusion technique that's used in Imagine to create really crisp individual images that can be used to generate short videos.
Oh my, they combine?
First rendering of a super resolution text to video generation.
Okay, this is great.
A blue balloon stuck in the branches of a redwood tree. Camera pans from the tree with single balloon to the zoo entrance.
The balloon, I guess that's a zoo.
Camera pans to the zoo entrance. Camera moves very quickly into the zoo. First-person view of flying inside a beautiful garden. The head of a giraffe emerges from...
The head of a giraffe? Did you see that? Oh my god. Oh my gosh, I shouldn't say that word. I do see the giraffe.
Side.
Yes.
Giraffe walks towards a tree. Zoom into the giraffe's mouth,
definitely
of course.
Looks like a what? Going into the mouth?
Giraffe gets close to a branch and picks a blue balloon. A single helium blue balloon with a white string is flying towards a giraffe's head. Giraffe chewing with the blue balloon nearby. Camera tilting, following the single blue balloon flying away.
Dude.
I didn't build this. I'm sorry. I think this is amazing. I genuinely think it's amazing that we can talk about telling long-form stories like this. What's exciting about this is that we can generate super resolution video from not just one prompt, but from a sequence of prompts, effectively giving us a new way of storytelling.
This is cool. I haven't seen anything quite that advanced. I definitely think that was a big step forward. That's cool, man. I mean, yeah, text to video. I guess I should think of it more like paragraphs or text sequences to video. Like, yeah, I mean, that you're just going to throw in, you're going to write a screen. There's so many screenplays out there that nobody is going to make into a movie because they just don't have the budget. No one's going to greenlight it. Throw it in there, man. And you get your own custom Star Wars story, or you get all these cool little, you know, scripts that have been sent to big movie studios. I'm sure there's going to be great scripts that have just been sitting on desks collecting dust. And once they get into a system like this, they will find a huge audience and they will make the creative who made that very happy. So I'm excited for this tool.